Welcome back to Mayo Clinic Radio. I'm Dr. Tom Shives.
And I'm Tracy McCray.
Tracy, did you realize that it is National Kidney Month?
No idea.
But you've been around long enough to know that it's probably a good idea for all of us to give our kidneys a second thought and a well-deserved checkup.
Attention to the kidneys is always a good thing, yes.
Well, you're right. There aren't too many organs that are in your body that are more important than your kidneys. Actually, you can't live without your kidneys. You can live with one, but you can't live with none. Well, I guess you can live without your kidneys, with no kidneys, but it's pretty difficult. Your kidneys are pretty amazing. They filter over 50 gallons of blood every day. They regulate blood pressure. They get rid of whatever your body doesn't need, toxins in your body. They're sort of the garbage collector of the body. They produce an active form of vitamin D, and they control the production of red blood cells, and I'm sure I missed something.
Well, unfortunately, they're also prone to disease. 1 in 3 Americans is at risk for kidney disease due to diabetes, high blood pressure, or a family history of kidney failure. There are more than 30 million Americans who already have kidney disease, and most don't even know it. It's time to focus on the kidneys. Joining us in studio is a Mayo Clinic kidney specialist, Dr. Ladan Zand. Welcome to the program, Dr. Zand. It's nice to meet you.
Thanks for having me. Nice to meet you as well.
Dr. Ladan Zand, nice to have you. You have a little bit of an accent. I can tell you're not from Iowa.
I'm not, yes.
Where are you from?
Originally Persian.
Persian.
Yeah.
And then how did you end up at the Mayo Clinic?
Well, I came to Canada for my training for undergraduate and for medical school. And then I decided to come to Mayo Clinic for my residency training. And then I stayed on for my nephrology fellowship and then on staff now for the last 4 to 5 years.
So you're a kidney expert.
Well, what got you interested in working with kidneys?
It actually started in medical school. I was fascinated by the pathophysiology of kidney disease in general. And after I got a chance to work with patients, I found it very rewarding. I specialize in a specific type of kidney disease, which is the inflammatory conditions in the kidney called glomerulonephritis. And I find that very satisfying. These are patients with acute kidney issues that you can help, and has been very gratifying.
You know, it almost sounds like there is an epidemic of kidney disease, not in the United States, but not just in the United States, but the world. 30 million people in this country have kidney disease, and most don't know it.
That's absolutely correct. Part of that is because certain diseases such as diabetes and hypertension increase your risk of developing kidney disease. And in addition to obesity, and it seems that obesity and diabetes have been on the rise, and that may be partly because the reason to see more prevalence of kidney disease.
First of all, why do we have 2 kidneys?
That's an excellent question. You know, I think that's sort of the nature's way. You're born with more function that you need. And the thought is that perhaps if you had an injury down the line, that you have enough reserve to be able to survive that injury. But in adults, most should be able to live with 1 kidney. And I always think of it's a good way to be able to donate a kidney if you're healthy enough. But the majority of the times, if you have a disease in the kidney, it does affect both. Rare situations, you may have it in 1 kidney, but usually in both kidneys are affected.
And if you do donate a kidney, isn't it true that it does not shorten your life expectancy? So you can easily live with 1 as long as it's healthy.
That's absolutely correct. You usually go through a very thorough evaluation for the transplantation to be healthy enough to donate. But if you do meet the criteria that you're healthy, no other health issues, donating 1 does not shorten your lifespan.
You mentioned a couple of the risk factors, diabetes and obesity, high blood pressure being another one. But how do those diseases affect the kidneys?
The diabetes itself has been, I would say, is one of the most common causes to affect the kidneys. And that has to do with damage to the lining of the blood vessels in the kidney, so the endothelial cells, as we call them, and it has to do with the elevated blood sugars. And that usually ends up having consequences that lead to kidney disease. You may notice that when you're born, your kidneys are made of a couple of millions of little tiny filters that we call nephron. And usually if you start losing some of these nephrons, that adds extra pressure on the remaining units. And over time, that may lead to scarring, which ends up being sort of the final pathway for, regardless of what the cause of the kidney disease was in the first place.
And then obesity is sort of an indirect risk factor in that obesity A lot of people who are obese have diabetes, and it's really the diabetes that affects the blood vessels and the blood flow to the kidneys.
So that's correct. That is one mechanism by which obesity causes kidney disease, but there is actually growing evidence that obesity alone in the absence of diabetes or hypertension can cause kidney disease. And there's this new terminology they call obesity-related kidney disease. And I always think of that your kidneys are made for ideal body weight. And if your weight is above what's kind of considered ideal, that increases the pressure on the kidney or the work on the kidney. And over time, you may wear these tiny little filters or nephrons out, and that increases your risk of kidney disease.
Because if you're bigger, you have more stuff to filter, so your kidneys have to work harder.
That's exactly correct. Yeah.
Obesity in and of itself is a risk factor for kidney disease.
Yes.
And high blood pressure. Talk a little bit about that.
So high blood pressure has always been considered a risk for kidney disease. But a lot of times there has been this argument in the nephrology community of chicken or egg, because the kidney, if you have kidney disease, you would also be at high risk of developing high blood pressure because the kidney's job is to get rid of salt and water. And so whether hypertension alone on itself develops kidney disease, or is there underlying kidney disease that subsequently increases the blood pressure and that results in progression of kidney disease, has been debated. But I always think of hypertension more in the category of vascular disease. So if you have history of smoking, high cholesterol, that again results in damage to the lining of the blood vessels, increases stiffening of your arteries, decreased blood flow to the kidney, and scarring in the kidney and kidney disease.
So in your opinion, the high blood pressure is the culprit, not the kidney. But you're a kidney doctor.
If there's 30 million Americans that have kidney disease, and so many of us don't know it, what are some of the symptoms that you have kidney disease?
That's what makes diagnosing kidney disease very difficult. I would say majority of the times you would be asymptomatic, meaning that you will not have any symptoms of kidney disease until you have lost a fair amount of your function. Usually by the time you develop the symptoms, your kidney disease is probably pretty advanced. And that's partly because your kidney is able to compensate pretty effectively till late stages. But usually some of the signs and symptoms include, one of the main one is evidence of fluid retention. So it would be swelling in the legs, sometimes would be swelling in the face, difficulty breathing. These are all signs that you're retaining fluid that your kidney is not able to get rid of. Other ones would include evidence of toxins accumulating in your body, and that could be somewhat nonspecific, but could be decreased appetite, difficulty sleeping, difficulty concentrating, sometimes itchiness of your skin, and these are all results of the toxins building up.
So if the symptoms don't come until it's almost too late to save your kidneys, should you be screened? Should the kidneys be screened in screening tests?
I think if you're considered at risk population, you definitely should be screened. For general population, it's not advised necessarily, but definitely if you have a diagnosis of diabetes, if you have a diagnosis of hypertension, you are overweight, if you have family history of kidney disease, you definitely need to be screened. And also certain ethnicities are at higher risk. So for example, African Americans are higher risk, American Indians are higher risk. And so if you all fall in that higher risk category, you should be screened, yes.
Are there any changes in your urine that might suggest you have a kidney problem?
Yes. So bubbles or foaminess of the urine is usually a sign that you're leaking protein, usually actually a fair amount of protein to see the foaminess. Sometimes dark urine may be something you may see that may be a sign that there's blood in the urine. But changes in your, and sometimes also overnight, if you get up to go to the bathroom frequently, sometimes you may see that in patients with kidney disease because of the fluid retention, and then you may have to get up more often overnight. So those are non-specific, but related.
There are a few symptoms,
Yes.
but the best thing, if you have one of the risk factors, you ought to get screened for kidney disease.
Correct.
All right, and we know those risk factors are diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity, and a family history of kidney disease.
Yes.
We're talking with Mayo Clinic kidney specialist, Dr. Ladan Zand. Time for a short break. When we come back, more on kidney disease, including dialysis and transplantation, plus tips on how to keep your kidneys healthy.
You're listening to Mayo Clinic Radio on the Mayo Clinic News Network.